Welcome back to the Jeremiah Show. My special guest today on the show is Lee Ritenour. Uh, Catavento is the music that we're listening to coming back. Beautiful, beautiful song off the album Brazil. It's a new album by Lee and Dave Grusin. It's available now, and you can find it everywhere you find music. Welcome back, Lee.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. And the Catavento is another Milton Nascimento tune, as a matter of fact. And Dave had done a version of this tune back in I think in the 70s on one of his records. But it was really fun to redo this tune as well. So it's easy to find terrific Brazilian music for us. And with my guitar style and Dave's piano style, it's a good blend.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Beautiful. It's a great, an incredible album. Congratulations on it. You said it was the right time right now to go to Brazil. Why was it the right time to go to Brazil and do this recording, this new album?
Well, as I was saying earlier, first of all, there's so many. I mean, there's great players and musicians all over the world, but I think for Dave and I, we've done so much historically together, and it's easy for us to dip our feet in the water in so many different styles. But I think by going to Brazil, it put us in their world, and as professional musicians, all of a sudden we were playing with a whole bunch of people that we just shook hands with. I mean, they were all recommended by our friend in New York, Chico Pinheiro, a great Brazilian guitarist singer who's on the record, and by my son Wesley Ritenour, who's the drummer that plays in our band, and he spends a lot of time in Brazil. His mom is Brazilian, and my wife. So we had a lot of recommendations, but still, Dave and I went down there. We met these 6 or 7 musicians, and we brought our engineer and our tech, and uh, we walk into a studio that we were not familiar with, that was recommended to us, and we booked. But everything was new for us, so it kind of put Dave and I. It didn't make us too comfortable, which is good, because if we want, we can be very comfortable and hire all the guys that have worked on all our projects for a million years. But this way, we did something new.
So being uncomfortable pushed you to new levels on the album,
A-
do you feel?
Absolutely, and made it fresh just by working with new musicians, and of course they were all recommended, and they were the top guys in their field, and and uh, and the material was pre-picked, and we had everything organized. But when we went down there, we were in their world, not the other way around. So it pushed Dave and I, which is always a good thing. It's like the first time when I was young and I went to New York to record with all the New York guys. It was like, I was a little uncomfortable, so because it's New York, and it's all the cats, and I was I don't know, I was 20 or something, and so it's always good to be tested.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about some of the musicians. So most of them were recommended. Is that how you found them? Were recommended through your son knew them or your
Yeah, yeah. Wes, first of all, Tatiana Parra, this incredible female
incredible?
vocalist. She's not well known as an artist so much, a little bit in Brazil, not so much in the rest of the world. But I would tell people, the famous pop and studio singer Patty Austin that we worked with for so many years, and we used to do the duets with James Ingram for Quincy Jones. And Patty was this in the early days. She was this amazing studio singer that could sing anything, and so Tatiana Parra was like the Patty Austin of Brazil. Her pitch and her style and her inflection and her willingness to participate in our arrangements she was just so easy to work with, and she was the least known of all these people, because she's kind of buried in the pro circuit of the Brazilian studio musicians, but she's not the artist
Mhm.
traveling the world with her own records. And so that was so pleasant. And then Chico Pinheiro, who I had met before and had worked with at the Hollywood Bowl on Brazilian night, and we became fast friends because he's an amazing guitarist, an amazing singer, and songwriter. And so he had recommended a number of the people. And then my son Wesley, who stays on top of all the Brazilian music because he's a Brazilian drummer and half Brazilian and married in this my son and so he was also saying call Tatiana Para and call Edu Ribeiro on drums. And I said, don't you want to play on the record, Wes? And he said, no, 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 no. Call this Brazilian drummer, And so it was nice that we were getting a couple of people, various people recommending a lot of the same folks. So we went down there and of course we had hired everybody, and then I had arranged to have my engineer come and Don Murray, who's done, I think, all my albums and almost all of Dave's albums, since the '70s, and so Don had to come, and it was really a family affair, and of course my wife Carmen was there.
Oh, wow. So great. Like a very family affair. Well, you said that Tatiana uh, influenced the album's structure. How did she do that?
Well, because she was such most and don't take this wrong, my audience, but a lot of singers are not like players. The players are one thing and the singers are another. and and usually the singers are the artists, and sometimes the singers do their thing, and that's kind of it, or they're background singers and they're part of a they tour with doing sessions or TV shows, or travel with somebody like James Taylor or whoever, and there's background singers. Tatiana was almost like a player. She could sing almost anything, and her style was almost perfect in the sense of her pitch and her inflection and knowing what the song needed. So she was like our secret weapon, and we could add her on just about any song. And so our great friend Yvonne Lenz, who we worked with on the Harlequin album, he's on a song called Vitoriosa on the record, and we did Yvonne's tune. And now Yvonne is, I think, he's younger than Dave, but he's a little older than me, and we've known him since the '80s, and he's a superstar in all over the world, but especially in Brazil, and he gigs all the time, but now he's older, and so his voice is lower, so so a lot of times when we were working with him, we had to do a particular song in a lower key, but Tatiana was there doubling his sound up the octave, so it had this freshness. So every time we needed to kind of solve a puzzle, we had the musician, whether it was Chico Pinheiro on acoustic guitar, and if you want to hear Chico stretch out, there's a song on the record called Stoneflower, and I take the first solo and Chico takes the second solo, and he's just a fantastic player. And then we also did one of his songs, and so it was really a family affair, the whole record.
Stoneflower is actually our featured song on the episode. We'll play the in entirety at the end here. Also notable on the album was Swiss-born harmonica Gregor Moret, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Talk about him a little bit.
And so Dave and I had gotten the tracks in Brazil, and then we came back here, and Dave came out to LA, and we did some piano overdubs and cleaned up a couple of his things. And then I worked on my guitar parts at my new studio here that we're sitting in Los Angeles, in Malibu, at the new house. And so everything was kind of shaped up. The album wasn't mixed yet. And I kept saying to myself, I said, I feel like it needs one more color. It needs one more uh, appetizer to add to the overall sound of the record. And there was the most famous jazz harmonica player in the world was Toots Thielman, and he had passed away a few years ago. And he worked on all those famous Quincy Jones records, and he worked with Dave a lot, and on his films, and So I said to Dave, I said, Dave, what if we add harmonica on a couple of the tunes? And I said, and I had heard Gregor, and Gregor was a world famous harmonica player by now. He's from Switzerland, but he had really taken over that slot from Toots Steelman, and he had worked with us at the Hollywood Bowl in Los Angeles. I think it was in 2019. And he could play anything on the harmonica, just an amazing player. And so I called him. He happened to be in LA, and we did some overdubs with Gregor, and he added just the right colors. So he's going to join us on some of the touring as well this summer and fall.
I love the description too of putting this together, the palette, and using all the different colors to bring together this great album, Brazil. Last question before we take our next break here and play a little more music from Brazil. Lee, are Brazilian musicians different in any way than others that you work with? Is there a certain ear, a certain sound, a certain quality that they have that?
Oh, 100%. If we had recorded these exact songs with American musicians, it would have come out equally great, but completely different. And the Brazilians, they have this flow with the rhythm, and kind of it's it's kind of laid back, but it's on edge at the same time. It's very hard to explain, and you can't even put it in technical musical terms, and you certainly can't put it if you were trying to explain it to a college music class. You couldn't. And but the Brazilians add this undulating rhythm, whether it's a ballad or whether it's an up tempo thing. It almost has the same feel, but I think it's part of their culture, and part of this inherent rhythm that Brazilians have. Brazil is an interesting place because South American cultures, Cuba obviously being one that has an incredibly strong musical base, but it's a Latin oriented base. Countries like Mexico and others, South American countries, also have music is very strong there. But Brazil is the only country that has its own language, which is the Portuguese, that obviously taken from the original Portugal part, and incorporated with Spanish, and then incorporating this into the beautiful melodies with the lyrics. I think it's almost one of the rare countries in the world that did that. In English, we would have writers to this day who do it well, but when you would take a Joni Mitchell, or even a Steely Dan, or a Bob Dylan, and they would express those lyrics into songs, it was uniquely American, in different kinds of ways, and then you would have folks like the Marvin Gaye and the Earth, Wind and Fire's, the Maurice Whites, expressing it or Stevie Wonder, so uh, music really plays a lot with each culture.
Lee Ritenour is my special guest today. We're going to go to break right now with a song called For the Palms. And Lee, when we get back from break, I'll ask you about this song. I know it has a special meaning to you and to your wife. Lee Ritenour, celebrating the music of Brazil. Two world-renowned award-winning artists, a collaboration spanning over 50 years, and an iconic reunion, Brazil. It's the new album by Lee Ritenour and Dave Grusin. It's available now everywhere that you can find it. It's on vinyl, it's on CD, it's also streaming. You can find Lee Ritenour on leeritenour.com, LeeRitenour.com, and Dave Grusin at grusinfilm.com. Enjoy For the Palms, and we'll be right back.